Hey there, I'm Greg Weiss, and welcome to another webinar on some tips about onboarding, which are an important piece for people who are anticipating the idea of getting a new career. And the probation period is a particularly difficult period, and that's what I thought would be supportive of you in terms of bringing this particular webinar to you. I'm Greg Weiss. I'm the founder and director of Career 365, the lead coach at Career 365, and I'm delighted to be bringing this to you from my home, where I prefer to probably be doing these reasonably casual webinars. Let's get into things, and what I want to be able to do is to encourage that you send some questions through the chat window that you'll see through the panel. But why don't we get into some things? And so this is all about your toolkit to exceed all expectations and pass your probation with flying colours. I'm going to turn off the image of yours truly at the moment. There we are. And so you won't be distracted. And nope, wrong presentation. I just love that. What we'll do is we'll cut that for... we'll cut this for the main slide. Slide hitch. Let me get going into this here. Here we go. Fantastic. Here we are. It's one of the... So welcome again, and off and running with another webinar series. This time, your toolkit to exceed expectations and pass your probation with flying colours. And I am your host, the lead coach at Career 365, the founder and director of the organisation. Good chance I've interacted with you at least once or twice during your time travelling through the Career 365 program across the 365 days that you have access. So I thought what I'd do is I'd start today off by the importance of pre-onboarding. And you may recall, for those of you who attended a previous webinar, and that is that there were whole things to do with pre-onboarding that set the stage for first impressions. And you'll see down the bottom on the left-hand side, our logo, Career 365, start strong, finish strong. And everybody knows about first impressions count, but also that last impressions count. Last impressions are important, and that's why we specialize in career transitioning out for outplacement purposes. But the start strong side of things is what I want to be able to focus on. That's first impressions, and they really crystallize what people think of you. And pre-onboarding impressions are those that are very important. And so just to recap very, very quickly, the pre-onboarding webinar you'll see by that URL, http://bit.ly/checklist by Career 365. And please go there. But there would be things like some obvious things, checking the dress code and cleanliness. Another one would be checking out your co-workers with LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook to connect with those people and understand what's on their real agenda and those of the organisation. Research your employer. So another tip would be saying that you do pre-onboarding, making very clear about some of the latest news that's been happening with them, getting clear on your job description. So really understanding what are your KPIs, your reporting structure, potentially, ideally, what it is that your boss is looking to have you achieve that makes your boss's KPIs be achieved as well. Asking your manager or your boss if there's anything you'd like to do, taking a real break and a rest in between your current situation and your commencement. Importantly, even if you've been out of work for a while, is just to be able to take a break and mark that difference of that transition that's about to happen in your life. Also checking out and testing out your commute and test running it, and then being a good school person, a good student, and bringing a note, paper and pen. You just never know if that's not going to be available, and taking notes as you're coming into the organization shows the other person who's inducting you, orientating you, or if you're lucky to be onboarded in a structural way, that you're taking seriously whatever they're saying. And frankly, you're going to be bombarded with a whole lot of information. You might as well take it down so that at least you've got it as part of a record is concerned. So that's the pre-onboarding recap. I did want to talk to you about something that's very, very critical to the book, which I will share with you at the back end. And in actual fact, I'll show you this book now. And if you can see this here, it's called Career Success. I'm proud of having written this book, and the people who have read this particular book are saying that it has really helped them understand what are the key things when they're onboarding. And I wrote the book based on the very proven 7 steps formula, the framework, McKinsey 7S framework. And you can see here that the central point is about shared values and anything else that comes from that. And there are some soft S's and hard S's. The soft S's are those below the shared values horizontal, and that would be including shared values, skills, staff, and style. And the harder S's, more tangible ones, that's structure, systems, and strategy. And so when you're onboarding into an organization, I ask that you think about 7 alignment choices. And what I mean by that is that the McKinsey 7S framework is a proven universal alignment framework that McKinsey came up with decades ago. And when I wrote the book, and when I thought about onboarding and distilled all the information that I'd learned over time and experienced in helping other people on board, and in having a checklist of ideally, say, 7 things that you could cover off, I thought, well, wow, the 7S framework is really the right framework that would appeal to pretty much anybody in any type of job, working out whether it's small or large organizations. It appeals right across the board. It's appropriate right across the board for the McKinsey 7S framework. So the first one, as you can see, is blackened out in the center, is shared values. And what I'm encouraging you to do in order to be able to pass your probation period with flying colors is to ensure you and your employer's values overlap and identify the behaviors that underpin these values. So this is foundational to the success of the onboarding program, the organization, and your own role. And it may be a bit after the fact that you've joined an organization and to determine the values that you share with that organization, with your new organization. Maybe a bit after the fact, but the point is that it's extremely important that you do this from the get-go. And it may be, and there are a reasonably high proportion of people who determine that the organization isn't right for them in the probation period, and as inconvenient as it is for you to be in that group, better, in my view, better that you find out that it's a bad fit and you've made a bad recruitment decision, and then stay for the long haul just because, in inverted commas, it looks good, end inverted commas, on your CV. And there are many dissatisfied people who just stay around for the long haul. Now, and the same way that the organization may or may not have recruited you in real well. And I know this might be difficult to hear, but there are mistakes that people do make in recruitment, whether it's organizationally led mistakes or the applicant, the candidate's mistake itself. How do you find out values? And it's really around what are the values, what are the behaviors that underpin those values, and how aligned are they with your own? Now, I'm not saying necessarily that you actually have a 100% overlap, but a significant overlap is important for you to feel that you're a good fit with the organization. and vice versa. So as you're onboarding, it's very important for them, for the organization to help you understand, among other things, what the values mean at your level within the organization. And what I mean by that specifically is that, and I often use this as an example, um, going the extra mile. What does that actually mean to somebody who is, say, a general manager of a division versus somebody who's at a call center and handling a customer complaint? Very, very different lines of sight for that role, but the values are still the same. So whatever those behaviors are. So step one, or the first part, the central parts of the McKinsey 7S framework is shared values. How would you find those shared values? You could determine your own through a number of different values batteries. I like the huge list from Steve Pavlina. And again, I talk about that within the book, but there are a whole lot of other values and lists of values. And there's one thing, having them written out, there's another thing actually understanding what they actually mean. So again, if I say excellence, or if I say going the extra mile, that may frankly mean, you may assume you know what that means, but you want to be very explicit in understanding what that means in the context of your KPIs and the organization itself. Okay, step two. This is a hard, as in a hard S, something you can tangibly determine, and that is structure. So the second part of the McKinsey 7S framework is structure, a hard S. Master the formal and informal structures to ensure you understand the formal reporting lines as well as the hidden networks for tapping into information and influence. And I'm working on a not-for-profit assignment at this particular point, and there is a very clear line of reporting on this particular committee that I'm actually chairman of. And so whilst there are very structured lines of accountability through to me in order for me to be able to liaise with the search firm, there's also some informal structures where there is power that is influenced, that's not explicit. And I wanted to use that probably as a very tangible example, because although I'm the chair of the organization, there are some very interesting other stakeholders with hidden or implicit power. And one has to be very aware of those other forces at play. So one is understanding, obviously, what's on your job description in terms of who you're reporting to and that organizational structure, and if you have a team, who's in that, and so on and so forth. But there's a whole lot more influence that takes place and a whole lot more gravitas to this hidden network and informal structure. So whilst this is a hard S, that hidden side is actually somewhat soft and as well, but very important for you to master that. Okay, style. So one of the people that I was privileged to meet today for the CEO role talked to me about the importance of his personal brand. And what I'm pushing here, and this is a soft S below the horizontal line of values, as you can see here in the diagram. And that is, this particular person was very concerned about their own reputation, their personal brand, about that which they will be carrying forward at all times, whether with this organization or with another. It's the same thing with you. You will have the need to protect your own integrity, your own personal brand, and manage your personal brand to ensure others gain an overwhelmingly positive impression on you. Why did I use the word overwhelmingly? Is because when you're being in your probation period, you will have a spotlight shone on you that is of such intensity that people are going to be expecting that you will not work out rather than work out. They'll have expectations about you, but it just may be the other that they might want to just see, that they may want to audit the recruitment decision. Did we make a good decision in getting Gillian into this particular role? Did Fred run the assignment well enough with the, for example, search firm or the recruitment firm to get Gillian in, and so on and so forth? And so Gillian's responsibility is to have an overwhelmingly positive impression, which then overcomes the critical spotlight that you're under when you start a job and in your probation period. So there are ways and means of managing your probation, your personal brand. The book will go through that, as do the modules that we have at your disposal as well. Okay, the fourth one is again a soft S below that horizontal line, and that's about skills. And what I mean by soft S again is something that's hard to tangibilize, but what I'm saying, and that's why it's soft, but it's skills, and that is another the alignment framework of getting you to look at the skills. And the choice here is that we'd say is do whatever you can to apply your unique strengths to your role and minimize your weaknesses for career success. Now, as I've shared with you, this framework, the content of the framework, among other things, well, it came from a lot of experience as well as a fair bit of reading about this particular space. And Gallup, the HR company Gallup, is an organization that I'll refer to more than once in this presentation. But Marcus Buckingham, who was of significant fame through Gallup, made famous the need to really work on your unique strengths. And there are a number of inventories that really highlight to you what your unique strengths are. I'd suggest the VIA strengths inventory. You could look at your Myers-Briggs type indicator to tell you what type of personality / psychological profile that you have that shows those things that are naturally your strengths and those things that aren't natural to you. There are a whole battery of other tests, Saville and Holdsworth and so on and so forth, OPMs and the like. And I could go on and on about the jargon, but the point is that the more aware you are of your strengths and also of your weaknesses, the more you're better off in applying your unique strengths. And so Buckingham, coming back to him, he basically said, hey, really apply your strengths. Don't do something that you're not good at. And a perfect example, it may, hopefully this helps. I'm okay with fixing some general things around the house, but sometimes I think about about having two left hands at times, or having better gross motor skills than fine motor skills, or vice versa. And so applying that to a job means I'd probably be better off getting somebody in, a mate or somebody out of a tradie to fix what I know I'm just not going to have any expertise or frankly skill in. And applying that now to your job would be finding the right fit and making sure that you've got the job that allows your unique skills to shine and to come through, rather than you working in a job where you're going to have to overcome your weaknesses. And what I'm trying to push the point here is that if you're in a job where you say, I'm going to work my way up, but I'm in a job that I just I have, but it's just not my area of strength. Well, you're probably going to be struggling here to even get your way up. And that's an important recognition for you. So the learning that I'd like to be able to drive home here is get into a role where you're able to apply your strengths rather than your weaknesses. We can talk about that in chat if you want. Okay, above the line, again, these are the hard or more objective S's. Strategy. It's easy for us to actually, it's easy for us to see a strategy if it's well articulated and so on and so forth. And in your role, I'd ask you not to bite off too much in your first several months on the job. And I encourage what you do is you set up 1 to 2 winning projects to energize those around you so that you can build trust, credibility, and value. And you may have 10, 15, 20 projects that you're going to have to manage. And that's potentially something that may be the case the more senior you are, or the less power that you actually have. And but I'm going to encourage that what you do is you focus on understanding the 1 to 2 winning projects that you can make sure that you're championing through, because by doing those and managing the expectations that you're going to be focusing on those rather than absolutely everything means that at least you'll have some stuff that you can show upon your review around completion. So a lot of people come in, they don't know how to push back. They don't know what it is that the priorities are. These are really important for you to understand what the strategy is and to get realistic expectations up front about what are the main priorities. And so let's go into like the 80-20 rule. 80% of something accounts for, actually the 80-20 rule in this situation, let me just redo it, and that is that there'd be 20% of something will account for 80% of the results. Okay, so those 1 to 2 priority projects, what are those that would account for 80% of the big ticks on you that said you've been able to build trust, credibility, and value in the organization. Staff, okay, there's one below again, below the waterline. That's an objective one. Learn how to fit where to contribute by agreeing with your manager in the context of your role. And this is an important one because whilst you understand that there's a job description and KPIs for you to fit within the organization, at the same time, what you've got is a need to fit into the rest of the organization. And regardless of whether it's a big or a small organization, you need to be able to work out what it is that you're doing in order to be able to contribute well. So, so staff is an important thing, and the alignment choice that I'm suggesting in your first several months during your probation period is learn how to fit well, how to contribute, and agreeing on, with your manager on the context of your role and those of your manager's role. So the more you can support your manager to succeed the way he or she is going to be measured on, the more you'll fit in, the more points you'll score. And then finally, the 7th of the 7 alignment steps is looking at the 7th S, and that is systems, and that's getting to know the way things work by establishing an accelerated learning agenda so that you contribute effectively. And what I mean by that is that we all come into an organization where there are systems of varying sophistication, various legacies, various platforms we have to get used to, whether it's applying for leave, the phone systems, or something much more significant like the whole CRM or ERP system, or whatever. And in order for you to be able to master this, the most important thing is to set up a learning agenda and have some support for you to learn whatever it is that you need to learn, but to accelerate this. And I draw on the very, very good work by Joel Kaufman. who has written two books that I've really liked. One is The Personal MBA. That's a great book. But the one that's more tangible to this particular piece, the seventh S in the framework, and he has a thing called fast learning. And it's about learning anything really quickly and setting up a learning agenda. And so I would encourage that what you do is you Google Joel Kaufman and see the book on setting up learning anything fast, whether it's and he learned how to play ukulele fast, but whether it's your Microsoft applications, whether it's some other application, whatever, you're going to be under pressure to master the systems that are there for scaffolding and for delivery for you. So they're important. And then basically, at some particular point in time, you're going to be actually evaluated at probation. And I have drawn again on a framework that I thought was outstanding from Gallup, and it's actually chapter 10 in my book, but it actually is looking at reviewing. So how do you prepare your responses? So as I've got here, you want to prepare at the point where you've got the pointy end review conversation or meeting with your manager. So you want to prepare your responses, and so that you're going to be able to be considered, and also just make sure that you've documented beforehand what it is that you've been doing over your probation period. The second thing is to go into the review with a positive mindset, so that there'll always be things that you wish you would have handled differently in your role, but it's important to face your review with positivity. And so, even if you've taken 1 to 2 projects, but winning projects and scored on those, and there are some things still in work in progress, I want you to make me very confident, pardon me, that you've managed your communication with your manager to the point where you can talk about what it is that you've actually done. And it may be about knowing that you're going to be focusing on these projects, and these other ones have been agreed to put on the back burner a little while. You can focus on the absolute successful delivery of the winning projects. The other part is expect to be told what you can improve on, and so a good learning agenda would be something, a great outcome from here. And the fourth one here is being prepared to show an interest in your manager and the company, and surprising your manager. Don't make it all about you, but also how you can contribute more to the company's success in your review. So there are some other questions that could come up, and what I'd be suggesting in this slightly incomplete slide is talking about just other questions that you might look at. So it could be, what should I do differently next quarter or next year, next month? How can I be more helpful to others on my team and my department? What are your most important goals for next month, quarter, or year? What skills might I develop in order to succeed in my role? What career opportunities do you think there are for me here? What challenges lie ahead for the company in the future? And so on. So there are really important questions to ask, but just make sure that you can be, and I'm aging myself here, I'm not even sure if the movement still exists, but being a good scout, being prepared was always the motto. And so that's an important thing. Okay. And I've already covered off the questions for that, but also just expect that you'll have a written record of your own achievements, and it's important for you to really be documenting things over your probation period, but also expect that whatever is going to take place in your review period, that they'll also be documenting, because this is an important gateway that you need to go through. Okay, now, in terms of the book, what you can see here is that there are 3 books that I've written, and they have different they focus on different parts of the timeline that you're in. Often I see people who don't know what it is that they want to do next, and that's called career clarity. And half the people I meet are a little clear or pretty clear about what they want to do, and half the people I meet just aren't. And so those that aren't get career clarity. Now, you may have some friends who aren't given an outplacement program like you have been, and please feel comfortable to direct them to us through that URL, bit.ly /365 Career Success book. And what you've got is you've got that as one of the URLs to get into those particular books. The Career Networking is an important book for you to note as well, and that frankly is to do with once you know what it is that you want to do, then it's time to be able to go to your network and leverage that network. And why that's important is that 80% of the jobs in the hidden that people get are in the hidden job market, and that is that people move around either because it's not advertised, they've been referred to, they've been vouched for by somebody internal to an organization or somebody with respect from outside the organization to say, Mary, you're looking for somebody, I know the exact person. And so the voucher will then if they've got some credibility, their recommendation will be highly weighted. And sometimes there's only one person that's interviewed, and ideally that'll be you, as opposed to going through a recruitment process where the recruitment firm is required to put up a short list of value. So you're competing against others versus competing against just yourself. And that's career network, and there's a whole technique how to actually get jobs ahead of time in the invisible job market, and it's really compelling reading for that. And finally, what we've got is we've got the Career Success book, which talks strongly about the content that was in this book. It obviously dives much more deeply into it, and there are accesses to your work books for active application of the concepts within the book itself. Okay, you might have some questions for me, and with that, that gives you a little bit of a rundown. But in recapping, there's pre-onboarding activities, and then there are during the onboarding process to be able to get and to be able to be successful. We do provide onboarding support over a 90-day period to help the individual embed. And if you're interested to find out more, just ping me through inquiries at career365.com.au. Okay. I would also encourage that whilst I'm getting questions or so, is just to revisit your modules, participate in the LinkedIn community, book in another coaching session, and go to the resources itself. Let's see, got a question here. Does anything differ in these processes now that a lot of people are working from home? Well, I like that question. Nothing does change from that. What I'm actually going to just quit the presentation and come up with yours truly here. No, I don't think anything really changes. In fact, but it does make life, working from home means clearly it has its own challenges, and its own challenges basically mean that you're not going to be interacting physically with people. So it's even more important that communication and success in probably being much more pointed in understanding each and every one of those 7 S's. Working from home means that you're going to have to build up some trust that you're delivering, but also in the early stages of your employment, it's going to be a challenge that you may not have the same amount of ready um, access to information, knocking on the door of your manager or somebody and saying, I'm new here, how do I get to learn something? Or I just don't understand this. It's harder to pull together a team and have the informal conversations in coffee, knock on somebody's door and say, can I have 5 minutes of your time? I just want to get something clear, etc. It takes much more deliberate attention to the issues, and that is in terms of getting information that you're going to need to learn for you to be able to successfully go through your probation. But the general principles are the same. It's going to be important for you to work out how that working from home in a distributed workforce creates its own challenges. And my encouragement to you would be finding out how you can be supported during your probation period to get those 7 S's really under your belt and to learn given a distributed workforce. So that hopefully that answers that. Okay. I want to thank you very much for your time. It looks like no other questions here. So I want to thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to connecting with you and just wish you well. That if you're watching this and you're yet to get a job, please circle back to it so that what you're able to do is to think clearly about how you're going to make a success of your new job in your first during your probation period. Get that book when it's appropriate for you to do so. I wish you well and want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to watch this. All the best.